Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Get Messy podcast episode. Today, we are speaking to Jane Davenport, and I am so excited to get into all of the wisdom that she has to share with us. So, Jane, do you want to introduce yourself? Wisdom. You're going to have wisdom. I know you're going to have wisdom to share.
I'll try.
Gotta get messy and show the world you growing as an artist. And you're free to be yourself. You got a dream, you need to start it. Stick together. Get Messy says you're formally invited to a community where you can find people that spark the field of excitement. Too many art supplies, not enough time. No, it's tougher, so you must find a way to feel some connection. We got a lot of people with the same kind, a great mind. We here for you, a platform so we can hear your views. Time's yours, forget yours. I know you bored of them same rules.
So I'm Jane Davenport, and I'm I'm a mixed media artist, first and foremost, I guess, and I design art supplies and do live streams and just do anything that I can, write books occasionally, to encourage people to draw, paint, and in particular art journal, because that's what I love. And art journaling is such a broad realm of creativity that it's illuminating. I think when people first discover it was for me, because there's just so much, and it's just for you to feel like yourself as a creative person. You don't have to be an artist. But you can be. A lot of artists keep art journals. I think I've gone completely off topic, but that is me. I've introduced myself by rambling on.
I love it. So how did you get into art journaling and then also creating supplies?
I had an event happen, which isn't important, but for the first time, I felt like I lost a bit of my creativity. And there was an ad in the paper, and it said there was a course at a local art store, 6 Secrets of Creativity or something, led by a local artist. And I went along, and the class was great. But what was so interesting is the teacher said, "You would love art journaling." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she bought in one of her art journals on the second day. It wasn't part of the course. And as she opened it, I felt angels. I felt the angels. I heard them, felt them, that singing. Oh,
yes.
Because I thought, my gosh, I've got a planner. I've got lists. I've got a diary. I've got a visual diary. I've got sketchbooks, notebooks, this, that, and everything else. I could put it all in the one thing. And that started this whole thing. That I've discovered it was a community of people, and every single style was different, and it was a sharing community. Whereas in the fine arts, which is the world that I'd been in, I was a photographic artist. I had a gallery, all of these sorts of things. Once you found your style and your thing, you really had to be quite protective of it. And that's certainly the way other artists were. Nice people, but the whole thing is you're trying to be different. And in part of that, it's a little bit gatekeepery and a little bit just you're fine, but over there. Whereas with mixed media and art journaling, sort of part of this greater mixed media thing, it's all about sharing. You create a technique, you can't wait to share it. And then I started teaching. I started taking online classes. That was really a new thing. And then I was asked to teach in a collaborative online class. Loved it. Had no idea what I was doing. And then I started doing them on my own. And then that led to quite a big community. And I've done lots and lots of online workshops. Then I was invited to write a book. And that became a bestseller. It was called Drawing and Painting Beautiful Faces, and I've since done other ones since then. And then from that, I was invited to create art supplies with a really big company in America. So I started on that journey. My collection was in Michael's stores. It hit in January, was it 2017 or 2018? And it was a massive success. And I had, like, as soon as that first collection went in, it sold out, and then it sold out, and then they wanted a whole new collection, and I just had ideas for days, just and then another collection. But creating with a team, like a big team of people for big stores like that, has lots of qualifiers and lots of boundaries. And over time, I outgrew those boundaries. And then I was just in this unique position where I could just start creating art supplies however whatever I wanted to do. It didn't matter how niche, how weird, how odd, how many colours, all of those boundaries were removed. And I started creating my own art supplies, which I have on my website. I still work with other companies from time to time, and I love that because it is fun to work with a team of other people. But I adore doing what I do as well. So I have completely forgotten the question. And
no, you've answered. You've answered. I was wondering now, as you were speaking and sort of saying how you were then able to move from having these constraints of how many colors and, it has to look a certain way, to being able to do your own thing. How do you sort of think ahead of time, I want a supply that can do X, Y, Z, or let's create something and see what it can do? What does that process look like?
It depends. It's usually exploration, and I might be doing something and I think, I wonder what I really need is, if only this watercolor could also do this other trick. Like I could have more layerability, more opacity. So then that starts me thinking, okay, well, is that a new thing? How do I get that to happen? And then it works that way. Sometimes it might start from something else that I've already done or that exists, and I think, well, maybe I can just do it better for me. Like, it can be better. I'm a very selfish artist. Most of what I do is driven by my own needs, and so I just wouldn't do it just for the sake of it. It has to have a material difference in my workflow. And then that's usually how new things are created. And if something just creates a lot of excitement for me, because I have so many art supplies, I've designed, I keep saying over 700, but I've been saying that for years, so it must be more than that. So I don't really know. It doesn't matter the number anyway, who cares? It's just, there's a lot. And also I have, a lot of other art supplies. Actually, I've just taken, I only use my own art supplies. That's how many of them I've designed. The only thing I don't have that I use is scissors. I've got some really cool scissors in Japan. So just about everything else is in my own, just because I could just see a way of doing it just a little bit better for mixed media, to make it more robust, or a different kind of colours, that sort of thing. So what the two options you gave me, the answer is yes to both of those things. Yeah.
And I love that, that you're creating for yourself, right? You said you feel that it's selfish, but I think it's actually really important, because you are then understanding exactly what people are needing, what they are wanting their supplies to be able to do. So I love that you are able to incorporate your own work in it and say, what if it could do this, or what if it could look a little different? So I think it's really important that you are creating for yourself, because it's then sort of allowing others to be able to also use those supplies in unique ways.
Yes, and it's hard to put yourself in the artist's feet, because we all create so differently, and that's part of what makes creativity so fascinating, is how differently everyone uses it. So last weekend, and I'm doing it again this weekend, and as often as I can, I meet up with friends, and we just have art supplies. They're all mine, and because I would be offended if.
Yes.
Anyways, but I love watching how people use things, and I'll take something new that I'm developing, that I'm working on, and I'll just leave it there, and I'll just wait for someone to be like, oh, that's new, what's that? And then just see if they can work it out. And if they can't, if it's too odd, then that makes me rethink things. Okay, how can I make this so it's just more available? I like art supplies. I like things, actually, in general, in life, that do what you think they're going to do. I like a pleasant surprise. I like it when they overachieve, but I do like it when something does what you think it's going to do, because if it doesn't do that, people usually think, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. Oh, and it puts you into a negative mind space, and that's not good for art. We want to be challenged. We don't want everything to go right. We know that mistakes are good, but we want to keep it in that positive, experimental feeling, not dip down into the self-doubt. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm meant to be doing the dishes. I'm meant to be doing all of those things that pull us away from our art. I want to just push them off for as long as possible, and I can help with that with art supplies. So I feel like that is part of, once I've got that initial idea and that initial inspiration, there's lots of massaging you can do as a designer to make the design stronger and more easily accessible without losing the initial concept, if you know what I mean. That's the design. There's the design phase, there's the art phase, there's the using phase. That's the best phase, where you get to use the art plan.
Well, I think it's also important, right, that there isn't a steep learning curve with all the new supplies, because then you also feel like, as you say, there's so many other things that you have to do. So if you've got to still take a lot of time to learn exactly how a thing is supposed to be used or applied, it might also deter people from wanting to start using it, because they feel like, I've got to learn and then I can create. So if it is, as you say, if it does what it's supposed to from the start, people are more inclined to then want to just jump right in and get messy with it.
Exactly. And watercolor is one of those things. If you try to become a formal watercolorist straight away, or if you start drawing and you think you need to be Leonardo da Vinci straight away, that's just not going to happen. You need to explore, work out what the materials can do for you and how you can use them. And you can try on other people's styles if you want to, but the way each of us uses art supplies is really quite different, and the order. So I need to, as a designer, create things that allow you to do whatever you like. They're sort of going to do what you think they're going to do, and then be a bit better, so that you think, oh, I'm actually quite good at this.
Yes.
I could be a real artist here. That's the feeling I want people to have all the time. Like, oh, I'm a bit better than I thought. I better go and show everyone this.
I love that. And as you say, supplies can do that for you, right? They can. It's actually quite magical that you have the ability to make people feel like real artists with the things that you're creating and providing them with. So that's really
when
special.
When you put it like that, that is very special. I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
It's fun. But you can do that with showing your art in your own family, or encouraging a young artist or a new artist or an older artist, just like, and encourage other people. And it's just as rewarding for you as it is for the other person, because you know that they're going to go through struggles. Usually you have that phase when you first start and you're so surprised that you can do anything, that you're like, wow, I'm amazing. And then people have that beginner's confidence, and then you eventually realize, you challenge yourself, and art is difficult. It's called an art practice, an art work, for a reason. You need to do a lot of practice and work to gain that confidence and to learn new skills and to keep up with your own evolving taste with things. So there's this real growth pattern, and if you have been through a little bit of that and you have a new artist, whatever their age, or a skill, ability, it's just a really fulfilling thing to be able to help put other people on that path. And their path might be completely different to yours. Who knows where they're going to wander off to, but it's really, really lovely to be part of other people's creativity. And I've been doing this for so long that I've seen people come on and off their creative path, with the advent of babies or major life events, or sometimes people get more creative when they've got their little babies at home, and sometimes people drop right off from it. Everyone's so individual. But I've been doing this for so long. I've been doing this for long enough that I've seen people come on and off their path, and it's really cool to see people continuing with their art, because it is a really central part for an artistic person. It is a really central part of who you are and bringing you back to yourself. And it's such a good way to relax and get some breathing space around all of the daily anxieties and worries and that sort of thing. Well, you would know as well. It's just fun to be part of other people's creative journey.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And I think that's what makes, as you were saying earlier, the art journaling community so special. It is a space of sharing and connection and, finding community. And it makes art so much more enjoyable because, as you were saying too, in the fine art world or in other creative aspects in life, there's sort of a lot of gatekeeping and secrets and, let's not talk about how we do this kind of thing. Whereas this art journaling is you looking for in-person workshops, you're looking for retreats that you can go on together. There's a whole different feeling to your creative practice because it's something you want to do in community.
And that's what makes Get Messy special. It's not just birds of a feather, because everyone's so different, and it's more that, and I know with the community that I've built, it's more that there's something that is a commonality, and it doesn't matter how different our lives are. That creative part is a common thread between us. So you don't have to turn up. I don't need to know anything about your life. So when I've just had in-person workshops, and it's lovely getting to know people, but I don't need to know your trials and tribulations. Everybody has them. And it's not that I don't care. It's just that, to me, in that moment, that's not the important thing. I see the real you in your creativity. And it's like the loveliest part of yourself. I don't know if the best part of yourself, I don't think best is probably the right word, but loveliest, most delighted and delightful part of us resides in that playful, creative area of our lives.
Yeah, I'm thinking the most tender part. That's the word I would use.
Beautiful, yes. And people do get very tender. So also when this is unrelated, but in teaching, just how tender and how sensitive people can be. And just thinking, when if you are doing art with someone else, just remember that, because I meet people all the time and hear the story all the time of people that drew when they were little or were doing art, and a sibling or a parent or a teacher or guardian came along and poo-pooed it, and it made them stop for the rest of their childhood. And then at some point in their adulthood, something sang to them and they picked it up again. We are very, very, when we're tender like that, sensitive. So just be careful. Not careful might not be the right word, but sensitive to how much encouragement means to people. And it doesn't have to be false and, blowing wind. You can find encouragement in the way people use colours, in the way they use a pen or hold a brush. Look for things other than if it looks like it's drawn correctly. People get very wrapped up in that. Art's a response to what we see. It doesn't have to be what we see. It's our reaction to what is around us and how it affects us, rather than a reflection, because we have a mirror for that. Yeah. So just remember to just be careful of other people's tendernesses as well. Tender is a lovely word. Oh, I like it.
Oh, good. So I wanted to find out, you were saying that you've got a group of women that you connect with and you create art. So what does your art practice look like generally?
For me, I'm working with my friends is so fun, because I so rarely do things with other people in terms of my art. That's so funny to say, because some of it is through social media, but when I'm creating, I'm so in my own head that I can't have other people around. I can't have breathing. I can't have eating. Even the dogs doing little tip taps across the floor in some parts of that creative working things out. I just can't have any distractions. It's highly annoying. And so my general work thing, I just do all sorts of different things all at once until something captivates me, and then I go into that flow state, where hours just disappear and you pop out at the end of it, whether it's painting. I've just been video editing and got that. It took quite a while to get there, but I got there in that creative flow moment where you just want to complete something, not because you want it to finish and end, but because there's just something tantalizing about that finishing point that you can feel on the horizon. And I love having that feeling when I'm painting, drawing. Sometimes it can even happen during a live stream, wherever it is. But I usually have to be able to concentrate quite a lot and not have distractions around me. And so that's my usual creative. So I've got my studio down here where I create. I've got another studio at my warehouse, and that's not so much an art studio as where I do live streaming and things, but can be a very creative space. So I like variety, and I like just diddling around with my journals, and I love doing art journaling when I'm watching television too. So, and a lot of what I'm listening to with music or television ends up in my journals. And some of the things that are on television are disgusting and fabulous. And so I write things down that are quotes from things like Succession, Yellowstone. And usually it stands out because they're kind of raw. But when I look back at it, I think, oh my goodness, okay. I wrote it, but I didn't say that. That wasn't me. It's like using a quote from someone else. It sort of fitted at the time. So yeah, so that my art practice, it seems to be quite varied and prolific most of the time. Sometimes
Oh,
I'm late.
fantastic. Yeah. Do you go through points where you feel like I don't want to create, like that's the last thing I want to do right now?
Only if it's something else has happened and I'm just so busy, and I know that I'll get back to it, so it's not a massive frustration. Sorry, my nose is itchy. But I've just discovered gardening, which is a really good stress reliever, because the type of gardening I'm doing is planting things, and it's quite physical, and you sort of get, it's not like art. You've got to get your hands dirty, like inky, messy. And the messier, the better. And there's quite a correlation between the two for me. So if I'm not doing art, I'm usually gardening at the moment. But if I'm having to do other things, then I am unhappy, because I really just like to do art and eat. And garden.
It's actually it can become quite I don't want to say bad, but it does become quite a thing when all you want to do is just be in your studio, and you just want people to leave you alone so that you can just make things. And life's happening, and you need to go out and go grocery shopping or whatever. Like, it is important, but in the bigger scheme of things, it seems like that's really not important. We can just stop for a few days. This is important right now.
Yeah. And I think that obsessive feeling with it doesn't have to be all the time, but I think that's a little bit part of the personality of the artist. I think it's an important part of being compelled to create. I think is a really important part of the creative process. Otherwise, it's too easy to disengage, and it's quite hard to pick things up from scratch over and over. Getting into that creative flow state is really awesome. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you haven't experienced that yet, give it time. It's usually, you really have to just be in a space where you can be left alone from the rest of the world, mentally and physically, for long enough for you to enter into, it's sort of like a meditation, but at the end of it, you've got art that has sometimes just appeared. And I can't believe how often I look at art journals, because that's where I create most of my things. I have no memory at all of creating that. And if people say, what did you use? I would have to say, unless I videoed it, I can't tell. Or maybe I can tell from the colour what it might be that I've done, but I have no memory of sitting down and spending hours doing that thing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what it is. But that happens. Yeah, it's sort of such a part of who I am that I just accept it, and so does everyone else around me, because it's the only way that I operate.
Yeah, but it's really, as you said, it's such a powerful process that allows you to produce. It's almost as though it's, as you said, it's not you, right? It's just this flow that's happening, and you just have to be there to allow it out and give it the space that it needs to just become what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time. It can be quite euphoric, but equally, I probably just look like I'm frowning the whole time, because if I can get into that state, I'm just trying not to let things annoy me. And because I don't like being annoyed. I really don't like feeling annoyed. And that's all I'm trying to do with my art, get it to the point where it doesn't annoy me. And then I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's annoying. And then, okay, let's not make that. Let's just not look at that for a bit, and then come back with fresh eyes. It's a whole process.
And so how do you balance, I think a lot of people, like, they'll say, oh, I'm an artist, right? So business is not my thing because art and business don't mix. How do you balance being a very successful business person and an artist?
I work with my husband, so he describes his role as all the things I don't want to do. That's what he does. So I think
that sounds fantastic.
so good. So a lot of women. I always feel funny calling myself woman. Girls, women, ladies.
That's why I went with person.
Yeah, person. Who work with a partner. I'm working because you then have a sounding board, but it can be someone you work with. It doesn't have to be a partner. It's just that's very often cheaper in the first instance. And that's why it usually starts off that way, I would imagine. And you're both working towards a common goal. And depending on the people and the time of life, it can be really fun working with a partner. Not always, I guess, but for me and for Angus, my husband, like I said, he just does all the stuff I don't want to do. So, but I do like some of the business side of things. It's really important. I know that it's not fun, but it's really important, for instance, to learn to be able to read a contract. And when I say learn, I mean sit down and make yourself read a contract. It is excruciating. It's excruciating. But if you're going to do something with someone else, it's wonderful to have that business element documented, because then if something goes wrong, you've got something to go back to. If something goes right, you've got something to go back to. And also, if you just forget what your obligations are, you've got something to go back to, and you know exactly what it is that you have, what your obligations are, and you just set them as your foundation stone. So that part, I just always encourage people to learn how to read or make yourself read a contract. And whatever you don't understand or whatever makes you uncomfortable, ask about it. Whoever it is that you're working with, talk to them about it. It can be very uncomfortable, but usually it is very beneficial. And for other like business things, and for the thing is, if you don't earn money in this world, it's very hard to live. Some people are lucky and they're just born with money, I guess, or they might have a benefactor, but even then you've still had to work for it somehow. So there's something really wonderful in being able to earn a living from your creativity. What can happen though is it can soften you, I guess. And I always think of David Bowie and what his philosophy was, you've just got to stay true to yourself and be unique and be different if that's your thing. Otherwise it just gets boring, to be quite honest with you. So, oh my gosh, I'm such a waffler. My goodness. So
no, I love it. I love it because there's so much that I'm pulling so many ideas and strings and thoughts and questions, because as you're talking, it's so good. So you continue waffling. It's really good.
So I don't even, I got invited or won or was nominated by our Australia Post, which is our national postal carrier, to be one of they had a local heroes campaign, and each major branch picked some of their best customers or people they like working with to promote Australia Post. There's no alternative to Australia Post. I don't really know why they need to promote it, but I had posters in all the post offices and it was very nice. But to be called a business person was like, who is she? But I suppose I am. And I have warehouse and all of the products and things. It's a remarkable thing to accept that that people like what you do enough to put their hard-earned dollars behind it. Because I know, especially now, this cost of living crisis, I don't know if it's affecting where you are, but it's a real thing. If people trust me to the point where they will purchase something that I've created, it's an incredible privilege. So it's an exchange of energy, if you don't want to think of it as being like in business terms, but you are allowed to earn money. I think I don't know why there's such a ick around artists for only bought on by ourselves. And it might also be predominantly female artists that have that sort of thing where we don't own our successes in that way. But maybe that's changing. I think as with younger people, hopefully that all changes, and the struggling artist thing is almost a thing of the past, I think, already. And we can accept that to be successful is a really fun thing, and it allows you to do all sorts of other things like travel. Not that I can travel because I have very cute dogs, so I can't go anywhere. Except Japan. That's the exception. Yeah, so that was a very waffling answer, sorry.
No, it's perfect. So I was just thinking, as you were saying now about it, that the perception is sort of changing, hopefully. I've got 4 daughters, and 3 of them are under the age of 13. So they are currently, very much into watching YouTube and all of those things. So it's fascinating for me to see, because in their minds, all 3 of them have already decided they are going to be artists, and they don't see a struggling artist, right? They look at what she's doing, and she's living her life being able to make YouTube videos and make art every day. And this one's they're very much into Barbie things and Barbie clothes, and so you can make a whole living just by making Barbie clothes on YouTube. And so for them, it's like
so wonderful.
Yeah, right. They've already decided they're going to make a living being creative and putting it out there on YouTube or on Instagram or whatever it is. So it's quite interesting to see how their whole perception, for them, there's no struggling artist at all, right? It's just if you make art, you're going to be successful. That's what they're in their mind.
Isn't that wonderful? The reality may slap people in the face eventually, because you have to be. Oh, who is the author? He did. I'll remember it in a minute, but he's just a really incredible author, and he does graphic book Sandman, the graphic novels and things. And he wrote a little book about being an artist, and he's saying you can be not punctual, you can be not all that great. Like it was a list of things, but of that list you could only have one that was missing. So you could be, if you really had bad timekeeping, as long as you're an amazing artist and easy to work with, fun to work with, people will forgive the bad being late. If you're really punctual and easy to work with, people might even forgive you for not being that great an art, like that as talented or great as the art maker. Like it's just you really have to try and be exceptional. And I think maybe young people, that exceptionality, that seemed like I can be exceptional. How amazing to be able to think of that, of being that when you're little. Very different to my experience, where when I grew up, if you loved yourself too much, that was the worst thing.
Yeah, you're right. It was. Everyone was like, don't toot your own horn, and don't get a big head, kind of thing, right? That was the perception that we were raised with.
And my mum would like give us lessons on accepting a compliment. So someone said something nice to you, you didn't just be like, "Oh, you would be, oh, thank you so much. And we would do lessons on it. Thank you so much, because it's the person giving the compliment, it makes them feel good for you to accept that and be like, oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Because then that makes them feel kind. But yeah, anyway, it's great that young people are embracing their exceptionality and moving ahead with things. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So you were talking about working with a partner. I was thinking it's quite great, sort of circling back to that, because I think it's important, is that your partner is, first of all, always available, right? There's no office hours. You can just bounce ideas off of him, even if it's the middle of the night. You can wake him up and say, hey, here's an idea. So that's one way, that's one reason it works. But the other thing is they know you so intimately that they know when they need to make space for you to be able to do what you're doing, right? So he knows, I better deal with this thing because Jane's busy with that. And so, like, this is not important right now. So let me just take it on and deal with it for her so that she's got the space to be able to do what she needs to do. So I think that's why a lot of those partnerships work in business, because they understand exactly what it is that you need to be able to function, and how they can then sort of take on those tasks that are just going to hinder you and not help you move forward. So I think it's really successful.
Yeah. And my mum and dad work together, and Angus's mum and dad work together. So we're from entrepreneurial backgrounds, and both had parents that worked together, and also worked not always from home, but my dad always worked from home. And so even that can be a really big thing for some people. I think because of the pandemic, so many of us, or people that had never worked from home, got the opportunity to, and it didn't suit everybody. It suits me. But yeah, the modelling that you've seen from other people in your life is very influential as well. So seeing that the way Angus and I work is very much similar to the way my mum and dad worked, and similar to the way his parents worked together as well. So that's quite a nice little circle of something.
Yeah. Yes, it is actually. Wow. So I think it's also important that one recognizes that doing difficult things, like you were saying, reading the contract, right? Or being able to understand that, or just facing things that might be scary. Like a lot of us, let's say you get contracted to create a class or something. You'll sign the contract because, first of all, you're scared what happens if I don't sign the contract. But you just sort of sign and think, okay, well, I hope everything's okay and I understand it. You don't really want to face that big, scary thing of, as you say, sit down, read it, understand it, ask questions if you don't. But I think that allowing yourself to get uncomfortable and do those scary things is also going to give you confidence in other areas of your creative life, because you can sort of say, I did that. I read the contract. I survived.
Always. It's like drawing something that you've never drawn before, or painting something, or making a book, or any one of a trillion things that you've never done before. That is how you build confidence, is doing things, being open and willing to make a mistake. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
The opportunity, maybe like with a contract, maybe the opportunity goes away. Well, if it's just you asking a question that makes an opportunity go away, what I know from experience is that probably wasn't a good opportunity for you anyway. You're gonna ask nicely. You're not going. You can go in and say, just with confidence, and say, hi, I just didn't understand X, Y, Z. But if you're always tackling a new thing, always makes you feel good, even if you fail. I remember going to a yoga class. I lived in London and went off to a yoga class, and I don't know why, or how, but it must have been some expert level thing, and everyone did a handstand, and I thought, well, off I went trying to do a handstand, and I, of course, made a total tit of myself. But it was fun. Like, I didn't die. Like, I didn't, it's just, I also didn't go back to that class, but I tried an easier class. Also, when you try something and you fail, or it just didn't do for you what you thought it might do, it didn't bring you the joy, it's so fantastic. It's so beneficial knowing what's not for you as well. I remember going to a pastels class, and I knew within 10 minutes, this is just not for me. I completed it, but at least that box is ticked. I don't have to wonder about that in that context, or really formal watercolour, or landscape drawing, or landscape painting, that. And things can change over time, and I'm not poo-pooing anything. Just I'm thinking of times where I've tried something and I was surprised that I was like, oh, even if I could do it. And I thought, oh, that's not bad. It just doesn't bring me the joy that I thought it would. I'm glad I've done it. Now I know that I don't need to do that again. And that's so beneficial, because it just helps you narrow your focus and keep you on that little path wandering along through life. So being, facing those fears, things that you think, ew, this is really makes me feel uncomfortable. Sometimes that's your innate warning signs. So there's a lot of thing about listen to your gut intuition, and that, that warning you, but that gut intuition, it's very primitive. It's also just trying to keep you safe, and it doesn't understand the difference between I don't want to draw an eye and robbing a bank. It feels the stress. That lizard part of the brain, that gut intuition, it's very, very basic. So it doesn't really understand. So you've got to be, sometimes that tension, although it's uncomfortable, you then have to apply your reasoning and think, oh, look, it's not that bad. I'll just ask the question. I'll just go to this thing. I'll just do it. And even though your skin may crawl at first, something really good can come out of it. So yeah, it's just one of those things that you learn over time, that even if you can't put yourself into that uncomfortable position, it doesn't last for very long. And if it's really not for you, you don't have to do it again. So sometimes it's an unusual thing, though, isn't it? You know what I mean by that gut, you've got warning signs. The universe is telling me not to do it. And then you start to think, oh, well, I'm not meant to do it because I drank too much water, or whatever it is. Like, that's a sign. Sometimes it's just you're just putting little barriers because you just are scared of something. And that's a window of opportunity is being presented to you. And it's, even if you just poke your head through, you don't have to jump all the way through just straight away. You can poke your head through and have a bit of a look around and decide whether it's for you or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, I think there's it's a fine balance, right, between saying yes to big scary things and knowing when it's really not for you. But I think the only way you are going to be able to decipher that is, as you say, you've got to take some steps in that direction and sort of work out, is this just me being really scared of this opportunity, or is it not for me? And sort of sitting on the sidelines and trying to analyze it from afar is not going to get you to the right answer. You've actually got to, as you say, poke your head in, ask a few questions, feel around, sort of maybe put some feelers out, and then if it's still feeling okay, go a bit further in. You've got to actually get vulnerable and put yourself in there first before you can really decide.
Yeah. And just in talking with you, like, anxiety has become such a, who likes feeling anxious? Nobody. It's a horrible feeling. And it's kind of very demonized, really, when I think about it. Like, being anxious is like a big no-no, and we do everything we can to not feel, or for other people to feel anxious. But anxiety is energy, and it's really just that you have to look at what it is that's triggering anxiety in you. I get anxiety, and I really try and say, is it resistance? Just because I'm scared, and I'm worried that I might fail. And why am I worried that I might fail? What does failure even look like? Like, what, that's being scared of failure. Like, very often it can be a who cares. People fail all the time. Instagram's built off it, people falling over and doing this and that. Every time I do a live stream, every time I draw or paint, I have to be open to failure, and also knowing that I can fix things. You can fix just about everything. Well, let's just talk in terms of art. You can always do something, especially walk away and just come back with fresh eyes, because sometimes the worst disaster that makes you want to give up doing art at all, or crying, when you come back and look at it, can be quite a revelation. You're like, oh my gosh, how did I even do that? Like, is that something, is that repeatable without the crying and without the angst? These sorts of things. So they can be really important growing moments. And I've got to say, live streaming, like and if your girls are looking at doing YouTubing and this and that, I do live streams because then I don't have to edit them, and the editing takes a long time. So, and it's sort of quite thrilling, because very often I'm creating something and I think, oh my goodness, I want to vomit in my own mouth. Like, it's just not going how I thought. But the things that give me the most trouble, I know from experience, end up being something that I really love, because something about me is caring about it enough to be annoyed about it not going quite the way I'm hoping or expecting. So that means I'm connected to something. I'm connected to it in some way. So that's important. And by keeping on working and sticking to something until you get it to that point, it feels great. Builds your skills, builds your confidence, and it's that overcoming a challenge, even just on paper. And I think it definitely ripples out into the rest of your life, because it helps builds and flexes those muscles, because you're at least good at that. You're good at that. And it's why it's nice to be nice to yourself too, isn't it, from time to time?
Yeah, that's true. And I think the other thing with the live stream is people get to know the real you, right? It's not edited, it's not curated, it's not perfect lighting with wonderful angles, all the time. And it's just who you are in that moment, responding to what's happening in front of you. And I think it helps people to be able to see, oh, okay, it didn't go exactly how she planned, but we worked through it together. And I think it allows them to see the realness of what a creative process looks like. It's not a page that comes together in 5 minutes in
and it's real time as well. Yeah, it's real time. And so often things can be sped up, and the thinking time taken out. I know when I edit, of course, I speed things up, take this, because I think, oh, this is too boring. And very often there's a lot of time where you've got to look at your art and think, oh, what do I do next? And it's not just an immediate answer all the time. Sometimes it is, but sometimes you have to look at it. I have to procrastinate and start tidying up or doing something else. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I am procrastinating. Of course I am. I'm just giving my brain a chance to, it's the supercomputer's working in the background. Also, you can give yourself fresh eyes to come back and look at something. And this is why it's good to have more than one art journal on the go too, so that while something's drying or while something is incubating, and phosphorescing is not the right word, but while it's, boiling, you can just do something else, because that process can still be happening. We're very fabulous creatures, how we can multitask. So it's good to have. How many journals do you have on the go?
So I try and have, as you say, that variety, right? Like different sizes, different styles, different mediums that I'm working in at the same time, just to keep things interesting. And as you say, if you get stuck here, like with this journal, you can say, okay, let me just slap some paint around in this one and allow that one some space to breathe, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes like just different papers, because as soon as you try a different paper, all of your art supplies are new again, because the art supplies behave so differently on every paper. So I love finding, one of my favorite things is testing papers. I test so many because there's just so much magic in a surface, because it has that power to just make all your art supplies new. So you have to relearn, not in a major way, but lots of little ways. So that's got to be really good for your brain and for your mind, because it's all these new connections that you're going to make, and you've got to swatch out. And you guys, I love swatching out colours. It's my favourite thing. So swatching new things out, it's one of those things that's just so good to do. It just looks lovely when you're finished, and it's useful and you're learning, but you're learning as you're going as well about the art supplies in combination with that surface, because it's different on the art supplies behave differently. Even you can have the same art supply, same paper, different tool, different type of pen, because your hand has to hold it differently. So it's just a whole new thing, whole new art supply. It's fantastic.
It's actually magical.
Yes, it is. I agree.
Oh, thank you so much for chatting to me, Jane. It has been so much fun to hear all your insights and to be able to sort of just have an insight into what it looks like being able to produce your own supplies and what your practice looks like in combination with business. It's really been interesting.
Oh, it's been lovely to talk to you, Claudette. I've written down the word tender.
Oh, I love it.
It's just such a lovely word. And yes, a lot of people are frightened of being tender, and really it's just, we need more of it. We need more playfulness as adults, a little bit more tenderness, and more art journaling. These are the important things.